Support for this Work Trends podcast and the following message comes from WorkHuman, the world's fastest growing social recognition and continuous performance management platform. Explore HR's transformation and help pioneer the human workplace at WorkHuman Live online on May 18th. Join WorkHuman in tackling HR's most pressing issues, from the evolution of DE&I to creating a culture of employee well-being. It's human-centered and learning-focused, with compelling keynotes and actionable takeaways. This is the HR event you can't miss. Register free today at workhumanlive.com. Welcome to the Work Trends podcast from Talent Culture. I'm your host, Megan M. Biro. Every week, I interview interesting people who are reimagining work. And be sure to check out our Work Trends Twitter chat events calendar located at talentculture.com on the podcast page. Welcome, everyone, to the Talent Culture Work Trends podcast. In today's episode, we are discussing how companies and people can take unforeseen disruption and chaos and turn it into a benefit they can actually use. It's the old lemons into lemonade scenario, but you know what? There's some truth to this. And today's guest is a prime example of someone who helps people do this very thing. I read this really awesome article in HR C-Suite as I was researching this topic. The article described how leaders need to manage stress in chaotic situations so that their behaviors create a solution to the problem. Things like keeping your cool, using facts versus assumptions, communicating in a transparent way, allowing employees to speak their minds without fear of retribution, and working with employees to redirect their stress constructively are all recommended tactics. And this makes a lot of sense. My feeling is cooler heads will always prevail. But there's much more to managing chaos than what this article offers, which is why we have Dr. Nadia here with me today. I am so excited because Dr. Nadia is in the house, and she's also known as the Reinvention Queen. She is a scientist, entrepreneur, and author specializing in resilience. As a consultant, she helps companies, including many Fortune 500s, reinvent their products, leadership practices, and business models to meet new market demands and prepare for incoming disruptions. As a speaker, she delivers keynotes to hundreds of thousands of executives, including 4 TEDx talks. Dr. Nadia is the author of Overfished Ocean Strategy, Powering Up Innovation for a Resource-Deprived World, and Embedded Sustainability, the next big competitive advantage. Her latest book is the Chief Reinvention Officer Handbook, How to Thrive in Chaos. I mean, talk about perfect timing here, huh, audience? Wow, we are so glad you're here, Dr. Nadia. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure, is all mine, and thank you for having me.
You got it. Well, listen, I'd like to begin with this question. Why are chaos, disruption, and crisis a constant in today's business world? And why are they actually a good thing?
Well, talking about the first question, why are they the new normal? We have to look at what's going on as a context in which we do our business work. And the context is that in the last 30 years, we've seen acceleration of technological disruption. We have more and more amazing technology happening. We've seen acceleration of globalization. So if in the past you only competed with your own backyard, now the whole world is your competition. And we've seen other massive transformations that are moving the speed of change further and further. And as a result, the average life cycle of a business model of a typical company is now shrinking beyond belief. So we do this study every 2 years. And the last research in 2020 shows that if in the 20th century, the average life cycle of business was 75 years on average. Now it's only 6. If you don't reinvent on a regular basis, you are out of business. So that's why we're in constant disruption, because we're living in whole new cycles right now.
That number, can you say it one more time? Just so let's let everybody sit and let it sink in.
Oh, it's a massive transformation. Yeah, really. It's a deep transformative thing we are collectively going through, and we are not yet, I think, fully grasping it. So the average life cycle of a business for 20th century and also a few centuries before that, on average, was 75 years. That meant that you could start a business, develop a working business model, a combination of products and processes that are producing value. And you could milk that cow for the next 70 years, on average 75 years. That meant that I could graduate from college, enter your company, work in your company my entire life, retire from your company, and never see one massive change in my lifetime. Today, the average life cycle for a business model is only 6 years across different industries. And we even have more than half of companies, 60% of companies reported in 2020 that if they don't reinvent every 3 years or less, they will be out of business. So we are living in a whole new world that is running on completely different rules, and we don't really recognize it yet.
One of the things I'd like to call out now is it's totally human to dislike change. Like, I happen to be somebody, Dr. Nadia, who likes change, but I feel like the data speaks to the fact that a lot of people just don't.
Absolutely. Even in the well-educated white-collar workers, people who love risk-taking and trying something new is below 20%.
So, I mean, what can we do? How can business leaders learn to get more comfortable with chaos? Because that's what we're living in now, and we're going to continue to. This is not stopping. It's only going to accelerate.
Absolutely. No evidence that this will slow down anytime soon, which means the way we think about products has to change. We should stop thinking about this perfect product portfolio that can be sustainable for years and years and years, and instead think of short sprints. We have to start thinking differently about cash flow. If in the past you could have very high level of debt, right now in volatility and uncertainty is just not prudent enough. And on and on. A lot of rules have to change. But talking about the psychology of change, there are two things that are at play here. In general, in a normal situation, we don't mind change. If you think about a baby is born, and if there is no health problem of any kind, a normal, healthy baby loves change. You don't need to offer a baby a bonus to start walking. They start walking because they like trying new things. But we educate our kids out of it very, very early, specifically because we lived in a very stable world, and being the fast mover and shaker was simply not helpful. You were the one who rocked the boat. You were the annoying one who is always asking for more, and you would be ostracized in society that is living in in a super long cycles, in a very slow world. And all of the things that our parents and grandparents were telling us about how we should hold on to our career and to our job, and all kind of stories and proverbs in our childhood are all telling us that change is bad, stability is good, and we should hold on to things that we have. So we are not exactly averse to change, but we are educated to associate change with a threat. And then our body goes into immediate biological reaction. The moment we feel threatened, our adrenaline shoots up. The blood supply from our brain is redistributed into our muscles so that we can kill the threat or run away from the threat, the famous fight and flight syndrome. And we are not able to think creatively and have new thoughts and new ideas anymore. So the solution is to start unlearning some of this learned behavior and helping your team unlearn that behavior as well. And there are many exercises you can do that are relatively simple that can help your company start making that transition, starting with a very simple discussion. Write the rules of a game for 75 year cycle, and write the rules of the game for 6-year cycle. Just having that discussion at a team meeting will start the conversation in the right direction.
I love that. And I'm actually going to use that moving forward. Those numbers just resonate and they're so powerful. If you're out there in the Work Trends community listening in, what numbers do you have in your mind, or what preconceived numbers did you have before joining this conversation? I know my numbers were a bit different. So what do you envision as the outcome or result of reinventing business using a new mindset, tool set, and skill set? We'd love to hear some examples from you.
Oh, this is the most interesting part. This is about redefining what reinvention is. And in our community, and this last book, the Chief Reinvention Officer Handbook, How to Thrive in Chaos, it was created by a community of 3,000 participants in 40 countries, actually working with these tools in real life businesses and nonprofits and testing all of them. So in that community, we define separately Reinvention 1.0 and Reinvention 2.0. Reinvention 1.0 is a one-time project. You have a problem with the product, you reinvent your product. You have a problem with a process, you make your process more productive. You have a problem with your payment system, you rethink and offer a different solution and you move to a different version of a payment system. That's Reinvention 1.0. One-time project that happens in an isolated period of time, and then you go to the status quo. You go to the new business as usual. Unfortunately, the time for Reinvention 1.0 has passed. We are now in the era when you have to reinvent every 2-3 years or less to survive. Reinvention can no longer be a project. It's a process. It's a cycle of renewal, just like nature reinvents on a regular basis. You don't see a tree standing in the fall and saying, I'm not going to let go of my leaves. I was working so hard to produce this leaf. I'm not going to let go of this process. I worked so hard to put this process together. So nature reinvents in a cyclical fashion, and the same with business. Reinvention 2.0 is building a cycle of regular renewal that is connected to all of your other cycles: strategic planning, budgeting, production, marketing, sales, and other cycles. So we see companies that are now using reinvention as a way to do a regular audit of what no longer serves them, what needs to be let go, what needs to be upgraded, and what needs to be added. And we see a kind of relaxation or kind of breathing room created so that we are not fighting fires, we are not being reactive to disruption, but companies are beginning to notice a need for disruption before the trend is even here, and therefore transferring into opportunities.
How can leaders capitalize on using chaos? Because we're all feeling it right now. How do we use this as a benefit, even when it seems like things are out of control? And I'm going to make the argument that if you're out there listening, you may have experienced some of this along with us during this pandemic, for example. Like, things just feel so uncertain. They feel chaotic. We don't have all the answers.
We don't. So to conquer chaos, we first need to understand what it is. And most people I ask, and I usually ask a few thousand people each year this question: what comes to your mind when you hear the word chaos? So Megan, what comes to your mind when you hear the word chaos?
Disorganization.
Some sort of disorganization.
Disorder, fear.
Yeah. So a lot of it is about lack of order, and we genuinely perceive it as something super negative. And I rely on hard science, that is math and physics and chemistry and biology, to define chaos. And I love the definition that a wonderful geneticist, Bruce Lipton, offered, where he looked at chaos using the metaphor of a train station. So imagine yourself in the Grand Central in New York before the pandemic. And you see this beautiful train station, and it's filled with people, and they're all moving in different directions. So that is chaos. They are all moving left and right. They're not moving in one direction. Some people are taking pictures, some are standing, some are coming to trains, some are coming from trains. It's not just left and right, it's diagonally and so on. This is typical chaos.
That's true, actually. If you've been there, yes, that's real.
The most important thing, however, to remember is that each individual person in that space is not moving chaotically. They do have an order. They are having a clear intention, and they are moving to that goal with a very orderly fashion. The issue is that there is more than one order present. What would be a true disorder? If I took a megaphone and I started screaming fire, fire, and people would start running randomly, then we would have a disorganization. But disorder and chaos are two different things. Chaos is not an absence of order. It's a presence of more than one order. So when you understand that, you begin seeing chaos as an opportunity. So for example, right now, we all are trying to figure out what will be the new future of work when we are coming out of pandemic. Will we still work virtually? or we will come back fully to working in our offices? Will we still go on business trips, or will most business trips will now be replaced on Zoom? We are in the presence of multiple orders. Some companies are back to thinking about physical experiences. Some companies are already announcing that they will be permanently going towards virtual work environments. So this is not absence of order, it's a presence of 2 or 3 or 5 simultaneous orders. And companies that understand it start capitalizing on that opportunity. So Zoom is one of the first one to see how they are adapting and growing to this new reality. But not only them. I've seen hotels who are now converting their hotel rooms into co-working spaces for people who cannot work at home because of young kids or whatever else. I've seen new interesting ideas happening around food delivery and interactive space. When you have a meeting and you simultaneously deliver food to all team members in all countries and all locations, so that you create the feeling of a team meeting, even though you're sitting in different Zoom rooms at different countries sometimes. So there's a lot of interactive, interesting, fast opportunities that are being captured by those leaders who understand that chaos is not an absence of order. It's just more than one order, and you have to play in each order differently according to different rules.
That is so interesting, and I think you're absolutely spot on. I will layer some complexity on this when we talk about the future of work, and I know you and I are going to get to that momentarily, but what I'm seeing in the data, and you're probably seeing the same thing, a lot of people just don't want to go back to offices. Like we're talking about in droves. And to me, that is so critical because I think leaders are slowly but surely getting the memo. I hope we don't have to be chaotic about it. Dr. N, you know what I'm saying? This is tricky. This is not just a one size fits all, is it?
Oh, absolutely. We are getting to a place where we have to become much more sophisticated in the way we think about talent for multiple reasons. Number one is we all, to this day, even in the middle of incredible unemployment, all over the world, I'm not only talking about the US where we are right now, but all over the world, there is significant uptick of unemployment in most countries after the pandemic. Even with that, true talent is still super rare and hunted. And so you have to start being much more adaptive in what you offer to your employees, because they are shopping around. They know that if they are skilled and if themselves they are the chief reinvention officers of their own life, they will find a job, and that job will come up again and again, and there will be many opportunities. It's not an issue of having a good idea anymore. I have a lot of work in the startup world or in the corporate venture capital funds, and they have plenty of ideas. They have nobody to execute. So if you have a person who is ready to execute, who has a track record, but that person only agrees to work virtually and only agrees to do certain things, you will have to become much more sophisticated and much more reinventive when it comes to the future of work. So I'm with you. I don't think our business leadership is fully grasping the exit out of a pandemic situation, which is a multiple orders. It's not just the work environment, it's also what will happen with the global logistics situation. Will we have more of a permanent impact? It's also in terms of the trust and globalization. We did close a lot of borders, so a lot of things we have developed as a globalized economy went into a bit more nationalized or focus on national protection, which changes the rules of competitive game, and on and on and on. Starting with also the talent, again, talent acquisition. We used to shop around the world for the best talent, and a lot of those best and brightest actually couldn't enter the country because of COVID-19. So a lot of the assumptions that this newcomer employees, new generation will be available is simply not there.
So tell us, I know you could probably go on for an hour with this question, but what are the top 3 things leaders, people of all levels in any organization, how do we capitalize on using chaos to our benefit, even when we feel like it's just constantly out of control?
Well, number one is coming full terms with the reality that the new sped up world is here to stay. You cannot survive it by simply buckling up and tightening your belts and waiting until the new normal. There will be no new normal. there will be another disruption. If it's not COVID, it will be economic disruption. If not economic, it will be political, it will be environmental, it will be anything. But they are coming fast and furious, disruption after disruption. So instead of searching for the best way to survive until the crisis is over, now the key question is, how do we learn to live and thrive in constant chaos and constant crisis? And that's a whole different way of distributing resources, allocating your time, allocating your best people to a different kind of question. So that's number one. It's this deep mindset change that has to happen if you want to be successful here. Number two, stop thinking in terms of big long-term planning horizons and start thinking in terms of short sprints. Startup world is the best in this, and books like Lean Startup speak a lot about short sprints and testing in real life, something that is still very, very raw, that is not yet developed, the minimal viable product idea, whether you're talking about your product, service, or your people. Test things when they're super raw. Don't worry about developing it to perfection, because by the time you get it to perfection, the train has left the station. You're too late. So short sprints and so on. And finally, it's crucial that you manage energy of your people, manage energy of your executive team, manage energy of your suppliers and customers, because we're all exhausted. We are in a constant disruption fatigue. So one of the things that we do to manage energy is to concentrate on quick wins so that we get that boost of confidence and a sense of win on a regular basis that keeps us going as we are learning to live in this new chaotic times.
So, it's kind of exciting, because do I have a last question zinger for the reinvention queen herself? It is crystal ball time. Talk to us about what your predictions are for the future of work. What's next?
I think we will continue to see the overall tendency towards democracy in every direction. Democracy means that for most of the history of business, we had very hierarchical, autocratic organization when decisions were made by a relatively small group of people and the rest of the organization was just there to take it or leave it. Now we see a lot more engagement, participation expected by everyone on whether or not we go back to physical environment or work virtually or have some blended environment, on how we are to be compensated, on what policies and values should be implemented in our companies, and so on. So that's trend number one, democratization across the board of who gets to make a decision, or at minimum who has a voice on how our company runs, what are the rules of the game, and how do we coexist and co-create inside our organizations. Another thing that I see very clearly is that we're seeing quite a new range of new versions of what it means to work. So it's used to be that you either own a business or you live in a corporate environment. And now we have so much blended experiences. So we talk about people who are in corporate space but have a side hustle business on the side, or they're freelancers, or anything in between. If that used to be very rare in the past, right now, different approach to what a career is, where you are not running just one highway, but you actually have many side roads next to the main highway and you switch between them freely, is happening. So that would be the second trend. And the third trend, forget the idea of having a career. One career in your lifetime. Recently, Financial Times were speaking about our kids. I have a 17-year-old daughter, that our kids will have 5 careers in a lifetime. Not 5 jobs, 5 careers. That is, I am a dentist today and I'm an engineer tomorrow. So having more than one career will become a norm rather than a sign of being flaky or lack of discipline in your personal brand and your personal career. So at least those 3 trends is what I see coming in the future.
Dr. N, aka the Reinvention Queen, thanks for taking time out, and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I love your questions and I love the show.
If you like listening to this podcast, do me a favor, share it with your friends and colleagues. Let them know that the Work Trends community is alive and well, and we're always talking about what's happening in the world of work. And be sure to listen to our next podcast when I'm going to be hanging out with another really interesting Work Trends guest. Catch up with you next time. Thanks to listening to Work Trends from Talent Culture. Join us every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern for a live Twitter chat with our podcast guest. To learn more about guests featured on today's show, visit the show notes for this episode at talentculture.com and help us spread the word. Subscribe to Work Trends wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a rating, review in iTunes. Share Work Trends with your coworkers, your friends. Look forward to it. See you next time.